I am an everyday athlete.
I am an everyday athlete.
I am an everyday athlete.
Good morning, everyone. This is Jarrett Baston with Mark McCain, and you are listening to Everyday Athlete, a podcast devoted to bringing you the amazing stories behind the lives of day-to-day CrossFit athletes like yourself. Today, we have something a little bit different. Still the Everyday Athlete podcast, but we're missing someone right here. It's Halloween season. It's a ghost. But we are going to maybe a little bit different format. We might do these every so often and really just have some time with fireside chats with Mark and Jarrett. And today we are talking a little bit more about some specific training, i.e. your personal training, and why it's important to incorporate into your everyday kind of repertoire. Even myself and Mark, we need trainers. We need eyes on us.
No, I don't.
Yeah, by no means are we perfect in every way. So I guess we'll start off maybe with a couple facts. Mark had written just a couple facts down maybe that, and again, these aren't like scare tactics or anything.
That's all I speak in is facts.
Yeah, right.
But no, when I hear personal training and stuff like that, I think like goal training. So if you're already using CrossFit as your form of fitness, then ultimately that's a great, obviously, place to start. But sometimes whenever you're looking to overcome obstacles in life, you need a little more just specific attention. So whether it's specific attention to diet, to maybe just, if you're running a marathon, obviously you're going to spend a little more time running, or if you're doing weightlifting, hence barbell club, you're going to spend a little more time in a specific area. So nothing I really wrote down should surprise really anyone. With any form of training, you can have the worst program on the planet if you're doing it consistently versus you have the best program on the planet and you're only doing it once a week. The less planned out plan is ultimately gonna beat the more well-rounded. So just a general statistics. So like, what are we up against in the fitness realm whenever we talk about group training in general? The average person works out for an hour a week. The recommendation is 5 days a week if you want to see results. So that's kind of scientifically proven. Like, hey, if you want to see the best results, you have to work out 5 days a week. That can look like anywhere between 30 minutes and 60 minutes. And ultimately, we want to try to peak our heart rate for a minimum of 10 minutes a day. Generally whenever you're in those sessions. So that kind of looks a little bit like CrossFit. If you're coming consistently, generally speaking, we're getting our heart rate up. So peak heart rate can just be anything above 70%. So yeah, some days on the heavier days, you're not necessarily going to be peaking the heart rate, but it will absolutely be elevated for those short kind of bursts of those maximal kind of lifts and so on and so forth. So ultimately when you look at high intensity training, some of the things like that it does for us, there's like kind of a top 5, like, well, why the heck do I want to like put myself through this pain? First of all, it's efficient. We just mentioned like you can do a workout without basically any equipment for 10 to 15 minutes. So if you're traveling, you need a quick workout, guess what? No one wants to do it, but you can just start hitting some burpees.
100 burpees for time. It's a go-to. It's not fun, but
right.
It's very efficient. Promise you that.
With the elevation of the heart rate, it gives you a healthier heart. So ultimately, we have to stress the heart out. So to say, a good stress on the heart is obviously raising it up, making sure that it can sustain that type of activity, and then obviously bringing it back down once you're done properly. You're going to burn fat, not muscle. So whenever you're doing high intensity training, you're ultimately burning fat. You're not burning muscle. So sometimes you're like, well, don't I usually get that anytime I work out? Ultimately, there is a diminishing return on some areas, like some of our extreme endurance athletes. Ultimately, you are going to lose muscle. sometimes there's definitely a diminishing return. For our short kind of intense workouts, it really centralizes around just burning fat, no muscle. Let me see here.
I think one question that's going to come up is, if I'm paying for a CrossFit membership, which comparatively to your quote Globo gym or traditional style gym is going to be much higher, why would I pay for a personal trainer?
Mm-hmm.
I think if you've been here for more than a week, you can usually tell that this is more than just what we would consider just a regular gym, right? There's a lot more that involved in that, and we don't need to even necessarily go down that road. I think the important thing to realize is the whiteboard classes or our group fitness classes are a very blanket approach to fitness, right? It's very efficient and it works very well, and I've done it for a very long time, and I consider myself relatively fit. But the reality is if you need something else out of your training, i.e., or for example, let's say you do want to run a marathon, or you are preparing for a weightlifting meet, or maybe a Spartan race or something like that, you may need more specific attention than just what's going to be given in a whiteboard class. Another example might be, particular today, we have 30 muscle ups for time. Okay. With proper warm up, we've got about 20 minutes to really dive in, it's a good amount of time. But that being said, with your specific needs, we may not get to what the cue that may trigger your next plateau. You're
gonna get a lot more attention, obviously,
exactly.
in an hour of training. So that's definitely the biggest advantage of it. And like I was kind of saying there, I'm building a case for, hey, you're already doing the right things if you're doing CrossFit, generally speaking. And then this kind of conversation, I think, is just more about, why even consider doing an extra program, whether it's barbell club, personal training, some other things that general, CrossFit gyms already kind of probably offer. There's other, boot camps, stuff like that. It does centralize around your goals. So if you don't, if you're like, well, why would I ever do personal training? It's like, well, what is your goal? And if your answer is like, well, I don't know, then I would start there.
Yeah.
And then if your goal, like you said, is that, what, hey, look, my friends are doing this thing, and you know what, they actually, there's several people here that I believe have like those friends that are runners or, whatever it is, triathletes or mud race, Spartan race, and I want to go race with them every year. So guess what I have to do? I'm going to spend a little more specialized times in those areas. And the way that you can do that more efficiently is ultimately to seek out a professional, and that's what we're offering here. Same way, if you wanted to clean up your diet, you'd want to speak to Andy, your nutritionist, to ultimately speed up that process. Because as a lot of us know, and I've found out the hard way over the years, whenever you don't eat as clean, your results suffer. You breathe a lot heavier.
Right.
You sleep a lot, less efficient.
Right. So in kind of in a roundabout way, what we're really talking about here is really what are your goals, and again, I truly think there's room for CrossFit and personal training in everybody's life, but it really comes down to what are you pursuing. If you're coming in here just to be generally fit, I think for the most part, CrossFit's going to do that. Mm-hmm. But what we like to do is set those goals, down the road, and really see what we can do. Really challenge ourselves. So if it's something that you struggle with, gymnastics is a really good start off point, because we can really just hammer down on technique on a one-on-one basis and really, really see some drastic improvements. Strength takes a little while to kind of gain. But I know, Mark, you can speak from personal experience. You've got 2 young kids that you've been training for quite some time, and I know you've seen some improvements with them. If you just speak on that just a little bit, and some of those big drastic improvements you've seen over the years. Now, again, this wasn't like a overnight switch that was flicked, but again, it's someone that's been with you for quite some time.
Yeah, no, it's been honestly, they've probably taught me more than I've taught them, so to say. For about 3 years now. You guys probably, if you remember here, you've seen them around. Nick and Sal, shout out to those guys. superstar sophomores. One's at Simon Kenton, the other one's at Dixie, and they got them, I believe, at the tail end of 7th grade. And this is actually a really popular kind of question I get a lot, as far as like, how young is too young to start lifting weights and moving and so on and so forth. And there's not really a direct answer there. You can get into, prepubescent and, post and all that stuff. But if you come in here at age 50 and you don't move right, we really shouldn't be loading you, loading the body. So for the first year, I really didn't have them touch any weights. We just did a lot of just body awareness stuff, air squats, you name it, like a lot of just coordination type stuff. And now fast forward, they generally, during baseball don't come, so I don't see them, year round, so on and so forth. And they do a little bit of extra stuff with their schools that I won't really dive into. But I obviously can speak to what we do here, and I just generally put them on a basic kind of strength cycle, and then I work in a little bit sport-specific stuff. So their sport is baseball. They don't play anything else. The good thing about baseball, right, which I played for a long time, is you don't really have to have great conditioning, right? Your big event, so to say, is running the third base. It's not a soccer match where endurance. Granted, one of them is a catcher, and on a hot day, you got to take a beating. So I definitely don't neglect aerobic, but it's not the main kind of focus. So again, their goal is they want to perform better at their sport, as both of their dads have expressed to me. And we've had, at length conversations, and I'm constantly looking for feedback and how they're doing. Granted, they're getting older, so they're naturally getting bigger, but now they're to the point where they're putting up some really big numbers from body weight to weight ratio. I'm still not maximally loading them and stuff like that in bad positions or anything like that. As soon as the form breaks down, we're always going to take the weight back down. And that's something, unfortunately, in group fitness that can be missed sometimes. A trainer turns its back, and all of a sudden, you had too much weight on the bar, and you pick a deadlift's a good example. You want to pick up a deadlift, and if I had eyes on you, the whole range of motion, maybe I could have fixed something as easy as just getting your chest up or driving through your heels. But in putting these guys up, for a little more context, up against, we had a high school team in here for a little bit, and these kids were, I believe like 8th grade at the time, 9th grade, and a lot of kids they were going up against were they were older than them and bigger, and they were hanging with them every rep as far as the sets and stuff like that. And the big thing was their coordination was through the roof compared to the other kids when we're doing our little speed drills or agility, just basic ladder drills, like 2 feet in the hole, 2 feet out, just basic eye-hand coordination stuff. So if you're like, hey, when should I really get my son involved, or what can my son or daughter involved and kind of get moving? Really any age ultimately. Yep. And personal training is definitely a popular question. Again, CrossFit will absolutely work. We have several, I believe, starting basically as early as 12 into the classes, and we've had some 12-year-olds that have come in and really kind of kick butt. But ultimately, if they're working towards a specific sport, you can absolutely benefit, probably even a little more so, from just doing that kind of personal sport-specific style training. And I'll throw Nick and Sal into the CrossFit classes occasionally. Like we had them do Helen the one day, 3 rounds, 400-meter run, pull-ups, kettlebell swings. And I mean, they were, again, for not really training aerobically all that much, but we just kind of keep ourselves moving. They were, pretty impressive times and getting the pull-ups and stuff. Well,
and I think speaking sport-specific too, I played soccer for quite some time, and having some soccer players, soccer teams, and we don't move laterally hardly ever in CrossFit. We've tried some of those lateral burpees and things like that, and everyone's like, what are these? Like, I'm not doing this, but when you talk about a lot of that cutting, and basketball is another great example, especially young females. We're talking about injury prevention so much at that young age, and working with a personal trainer, or even getting a small group with a team together is huge, because you can actually work on some of that stuff and incorporate your traditional CrossFit kind of things in there, but you can incorporate some of those lateral movements that we don't see as much in a wall ball or or pull-ups or anything like that, because we just don't move laterally that often. Maybe some burpee over the box or whatever it is, but that's about it. There's not a ton there.
I don't think in any training really all that much you would see a lot of lateral movement, unless it is something sport specific. So yeah, it's not uncommon to not see a lot of lateral movement, but I know that's one of the knocks on just a general PPP kind of like general program. So
another great reason to look into maybe that personal training route. And I think too, some people just feel more comfortable with it. If you're lying if you didn't walk. I've been to, I don't know how many gyms, dropped in, and we own this place, and I feel like I could get in front of a group of 300 people and talk and feel just fine, but I don't know what it is about walking into a place you're not comfortable with, and you just feel out of place and awkward. Like some people, that just stays with them. You never necessarily get comfortable, and you're more comfortable one-on-one and having that person hold you accountable. And it's a lot easier for us to hold people accountable if it's a one-on-one situation rather than a 1-on-50, 100, 150. If you've got one person that's supposed to come in at 3:30 and they don't show up, it's gonna be a lot easier for me to call them than to guess who's supposed to be there for that kind of whiteboard class. So if accountability is an issue as well, that's a huge perk as far as having someone who's essentially waiting for you to come in, not just guessing if you're going to be around for that week.
Yeah, I think one of the big things too is you can kind of, so like with again going back to the kids I was training, being baseball, like what are they typically doing? They're throwing a little ball as hard as they can over and over again, so you can kind of predict where they might run into some problems. So whether it's a rotator cuff, labrum, upper back kind of strength, I know whenever I started CrossFit, kind of had to learn a lot of mobility drills, and I was still trying to work through a lot of mobility, but I've kind of just through that awareness, like I know certain things that ultimately I'm just going to kind of avoid if I'm feeling, tighter than some days, or if other days I'm feeling a little better. So that's one of the things, just having those eyes on you. And whenever I do work with an athlete one-on-one, I almost try to develop their own warm-up. And I always encourage, I was actually talking to a guy that just got through fundamentals today. So he's like, well, do I have to show up early to class to warm up, or do you guys warm up? And I'm like, well, we warm up, but of course, if you have an option to show up 10 minutes early. Again,
we're going with a blanket warm up.
Yeah.
If you have extremely tight shoulders, for me, I have extremely tight hips. If it's a squat day, I got to be there a half hour early. Because that's how long it's going to take. That's including the other 20 minutes we're going to warm up our hips in class. So yeah, that's very, very valuable and powerful, because especially if you spend some time with someone, you're going to figure out those little kinks and those little nuances that make them different from someone else. I just had a conversation today at one of our classes this morning, and we were doing this. Taking that lacrosse ball through the shoulder blade and subscap, and have that plate overhead, and it's like, well, my right side is so much tighter than my left, and we're not as symmetrical as we all may think, so you may have to spend more time on that right side, and again, in a one-on-one situation, that's a lot easier to identify than a 1-on-15, 1-on-20, situation. So that attention to detail can be focused on one thing rather than just kind of this blanket approach. So that's huge. That's huge. As far as, what we offer, what might be something, I know that we have a couple different pricing structures and things like that.
Maybe we'll do that on the break. I'll break into my just super cheesy car salesman pitch. But no, yeah, here's the thing. I mean, first of all, that's definitely one of the bigger obstacles, and as opposed to being putting a price on things, you have to see the value in it. If ultimately Apple sells, their computers at however much markup that they're going to sell their computers and stuff, because people see value in that. They're like, oh, well, it's the best, or it's the cheapest. It's kind of hard when you're selling that in between, kind of thing. But ultimately, I feel like, again, start with a goal. And if you're like, hey, you know what, I really think I can do this on my own, by all means, we want to provide an amazing community here first and foremost, to facilitate CrossFit. And, there's one thing that CrossFit provides is high intensity training. What we're saying with a personal trainer, is absolutely you'll get results. It's a little more one-on-one. It's definitely specific. And maybe for some people, it might just be one day a month where you check in with a trainer and it's like, hey, here's some things I noticed this month in the programming that came up that I just got really flustered with. And generally speaking, it's probably the same thing that is frustrating a lot of other people. And guess what that means for us? We're spending a lot more time coaching it. Mm-hmm. So we're already, generally prepared for it. One thing I do is, I always follow up with an email, maybe with some videos of even more. So YouTube is a great resource for anything you don't do in life, whether it's like fixing a toilet,
woodworking, to changing oil, and it's usually my go-to as far as like home repairs. It's a fantastic resource. But be careful. You gotta surf through. Don't just pick the first one and say, well, that's it. That's the only way to do this.
Yeah. You want to be careful of falling into that YouTube trainer. Just because you watch it doesn't mean that now all of a sudden you can demonstrate it and so on and so forth. There's got to be some prerequisites, just like college courses or whatever you want to say. Like, we can definitely point you in the right direction. As Jarrett said, the muscle up. Like, you want to, before you set the goal to get a muscle up, you want to set the goal to get a strict pull up, to get a strict dip, to work on the transition, and ultimately achieve the muscle up.
Yeah. Specifically speaking on something like that, I think it is really important to understand that, something like the muscle up is a culmination of multiple events happening, right? People like the idea of the sexy, this big swinging kip and, getting up and over the rings and everyone cheering. Same thing, something like a snatch, right? I like the idea of this, I'm just going to work on this. I'm just going to work on this. I'm just going to work on this. But know that might not be your path right away. Particularly in something like Barbell Club, we're going to be switching over here into a new style of programming where you won't be doing the same thing as the person next to you, and that's by design. We're going to be supplying you with tools that you need because we've had eyes on you to basically improve what you need to improve upon. Mm-hmm. And that might be, well, I'm just going to be doing these things off the blocks for 6 weeks. And it may be annoying, but what we're asking is for people to trust the process. And again, that's a through line, whether it's personal training, whether it's CrossFit, Barbell Club. You need to understand that we've been doing this for a while. And when we see things, it's not just pulled out of the air. This is why we're doing it. There's a reason behind everything that we're trying to tell you to do. So trust us. That's a huge one. That's one that we wish we could get everyone to do. Just understand the process, and there is a process and a method to the madness, right? Mm-hmm. You were originally a personal trainer, correct?
Yeah, I was. So whenever the legend has it, the story.
The legend.
Now, I really like to work out. So I had an older brother that was just think of like a typical middle linebacker, fullback, just a big, just a big, handsome guy. I'll be honest. Just ask Lavetta if she's listening. Anyway. So anyway, this big guy, I was always a little skinny, like 4-eyed, guy with had braces twice. Anyway, I wasn't as blessed as he was. And, he would always be playing his music loud in the basement, lifting weights and so on and so forth. His buddies would be down there, and I would just be like, kind of watching him, like, oh man, this is like really cool. So he was a senior whenever I was in like 6th grade, and that one, he was out there dominating on the football field and all that stuff, and obviously looked up to him. And I was like, man, if I'm gonna, be that good and stuff, I guess I need to start training. So that's kind of how I got the fitness bug, so to say. And I was lifting, lifting in high school, probably 5 days a week, so on and so forth, moderate results. Got to college, got in with some guys that were really strong. We would work out at the campus rec. One day I was in there doing some, different stuff. I would do CrossFit-y type stuff, just like maybe take a lap around the track, nothing like crazy. Do some pull-ups, maybe do some deadlifts, work on some jump rope occasionally. This guy came up to me, he was like, worked there. He was like, hey, you ever think about being a personal trainer? And I was studying business at the time. I was like, no, not really. And he's like, well, if you have an elective in this class, you take the class, you become a certified personal trainer as long as you pass the test at the end. And you got like an ACE certification, ACE or something like that. And anyway, so I did that. And I was like, all right, well, whatever, give it a shot. Actually ended up really liking it. The class was awesome. There was only like 6 of us in the class, so you got a lot of like hands-on attention. It was the first time I ever used like foam rollers and bands for stretching. We went over some really in-depth like assessment type stuff. It was really good at the University of Cincinnati. And then contingent to passing the test, they offered you a job as a personal trainer there. So that's how it all kind of started. And I never really thought like, oh, this will be like something I can do for the rest of my life. I was still graduating the next year, so I still did it on and off. Ultimately, realized just how terrible I was at being a trainer and just how much I didn't know at 19, 20, or 20, 21,
What?
whatever that was.
You weren't amazing right when you started?
I'll tell you maybe a quick story about it. So there was this kid, so they have a really good music school, and he was very slender. He was so we did body fat, and we even did like VO2 max, like all these different tests, really assessed their posture, all this stuff before they would start. This guy was like 3% body fat. But he was like really, really skinny, and he was a double like major. And he was in music. He's like from Salt Lake, super duper highly intelligent guy. And I have literally probably millions of dollars at my disposal of equipment. So it's like, all right, where do I want to start him? Do I want to start him on the football field? I've got a track. I've got a swimming pool.
So one thing about UC is you've got everything.
And then they had a brand new rec that was like $10 million. They had every piece of equipment imaginable. It's like, where do I start? And generally, like looking back on it, it probably should have been with the air squat. Yeah. But Mark was like, we're going to the football field and we're running steps. Yep. And we're doing all this stuff. And I about killed this kid. I felt so bad, like looking back on it. But I think we were doing like, imagine we start on the goal line and we're like running to the 10-yard line back, and then 20-yard line back, 30 line, and like all the way down to the yellow goal line. And we're doing that. And meanwhile, like every time he comes back to the goal line, I'm like, all right, let's go do a set of steps. And if you've ever been to Nippert Stadium, like these are steep.
And you're talking about a guy who's 3% body fat. You're like, you need to eat rice and peanut butter.
Right. But his goal was like, I want to get in, better conditioning, or whatever. And, this is a guy that I'm sure he's not listening, but he couldn't even bench press the barbell. So it was one of those things, had I, maybe paid a little more attention to his assessment and, looked at him objectively as opposed to listening to him like, hey, this is what I want to do, as opposed to just, using common sense and being like, hey, look, dude, I know this is your goal, but you really need to like work on your strength. Yeah. Because, if not, you're never going to parlay that into.
There's no conditioning to be had. Here's the cool part though, because I definitely have moments like that in my cringe-worthy memory. The cool part is we've definitely learned from that, and we have a pretty solid assessment that we bring people through now, right? Mm-hmm. And you actually developed this. If you want to talk a little bit about kind of, and it's going to be different for everyone, but if let's just say weight loss is going to be the goal. So kind of walk us through if we walk upstairs, what that's going to be.
So yeah, I think it's got to start with some numbers, right? I think that's intuitively the best way to set goals. Generally speaking, like I want this 10 to go to a 9, or whatever it is. So if you do, this is something we're implementing whenever you're, again, if you're a member and you're listening. This is optional. Anytime your new contract renews in November, you can do our assessment program, which first thing you come upstairs in our office, very private. You get on the scale. We're going to get some measurements of the chest, the waist, the hips. We're going to take our body fat. We can do that 2 ways. We do have a handheld measurement, which is obviously less invasive than a pinch test. We do a 4-point pinch test, and then we enter along with the weight and the measurements. We have a website that we enter some of your numbers in, and then we get ultimately your body fat. What else do we do? Oh, we do our resting heart rate. We're going to do our blood pressure. So just all general numbers that are just going to give you some instant feedback to where, if you're coming in and you're like, man, I know I'm just like so out of shape right now. And then you take some numbers and you're like, oh, you know what? Maybe it's not that bad. Or vice versa. Hey, I feel really good about what I'm doing with my life. I work out, here and there. And you sit down and your resting heart rate's 95. And you're like, whoa, where'd that come from? And obviously we're never going to pretend to be doctors. We have several great doctors that come here that we can refer out to for any type of blood paneling, different stuff like that. But it is a good assessment. It's something that can take literally 10 to 15 minutes. Ultimately, we do want to sit down in that session and just try to put in the words or writing some type of goal, because ultimately after you get this information, this instant kind of feedback, you know that might lead to, hey, this is better than I thought, or hey, this is not what I was expecting. And we can absolutely do some movement goals too, to where we can analyze your air squat, analyze a basic lunge, a sit and reach type test as well. But that self-awareness is key, and that's just life. I mean, generally speaking, like fitness, you're going to get instant feedback. Life sometimes isn't always as instant, like, hey, you need to read more. Like that might not always be apparent. But I think we can all generally agree, if you're trying to better yourself, there's certain things you can do, and not necessarily all of them are fun. But so figuring out where you're at, just starting wise, generally speaking, we would love a kind of a before photo, if you will, if we are going to put you on some type of program to move forward with. But so within that, after that session or that assessment, we would do a session with you guys, and again, this is starting in November. Moving forward, the first one would be included in the contract renewal moving forward. And I think this is just something that would give you even better insight to kind of how we're really going to try to step our game up. Just as coaches, we definitely are not perfect. We don't have all the answers, but hopefully we can, put you in that right direction to like, hey, some of it's not always going to be as simple as stop eating cake, eat salad. It might be like, hey, try cutting, peanuts out of your diet and see if that, decreases your inflammation.
Yeah, I think what it really comes down to, if you had to put some fine bullet points on our conversation, because I want to kind of keep this one short for everybody and hear both of us just drone on. Usually they're here for other people's stories. I've heard one person that wants to hear our stories. Only one out of everyone. But
no one wants to hear that.
I know. But I think if we had to put some bullet points on it, I think all of this starts with a goal. And that goal, it hopefully is addressed in our whiteboard class. But for many, it's not, because we're talking about a blanket program meant for, well over 100 people. And what we're trying to do is talk about individual goals here. So if you have an individual goal, or if you don't, we can sit down and talk about that. And additionally, we're going to be including that one free session per contract duration or agreement duration. So it's going to be included at a minimum. Come and talk to us. The whole point of this is we are in the business for you guys, making you the best possible version of yourself, right? This is what we're here for, is you all. So come talk to us. Again, November 1, we'll be kicking off that kind of, we'll be including that one free session per agreement. So we'll be able to set that up for you. And then once we get that goal, once we get the assessment set up, once we get our session underway, we can continue on with our sessions from there. So, Mark, I don't know if you have anything in closing.
Yeah, no, just if you're not seeing the value, again, this isn't meant to be like a salesy type thing, because again, we're including it, so it's not, it's a free thing. Our biggest fear is that you guys aren't going to see the value, so you're just going to like, well, that sounds nice, but I don't really see the point in that, or this is what I think it's going to be, and no, this is what it actually is. You don't have to do the assessment. Like I said, we can just go right into the session. Minimally, you'll get an hour with a trainer. We can chat, for the hour preferably. We would love to work out and, work up to a sweat and maybe formulate a goal through the process, because this is something we tried in the past that we just couldn't, we couldn't scale it. We were doing a lot of sit down with people before, which was awesome. We were getting to know people that much better. Then we had the crazy move that was to our place we're at now, and it was just one of those things. One thing that everyone has in common that comes here is you're very busy. So it's tough to link up schedules, because the more we grow, the busier we all get too. So what I would say, in closing, is there is a lot of value in this. There's by no means does each session end with us trying to, pitch you on a 2-year agreement to personal training or anything like that. It is just literally to try to help you guys out, see the value in ultimately what we're offering, and maybe give you some better perspective into, hey, this is where I'm at. And ultimately you have partners in this life that is the pursuit of higher fitness.
Fantastic. Hopefully this was educational for you guys. This is the first time we didn't have anyone to talk to but ourselves.
I'm very sensitive, guys. So please keep the negative comments to a minimum.
Yeah, you can send it to directly to mark@triumphstrength.net. Thanks again for listening, guys. You're listening to Everyday Athlete. Join us next week, and we'll dive deep into the lives of the people who make us great. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
CrossFit is demanding both physically and mentally. Setting goals are the foundation to push your athletic ability, and the hour we have together a day may not always be in line with those personal milestones you've set for yourself. Triumph Performance is based around just that, your goals. Together, in a one-on-one setting with your coach, we will set manageable and timely goals. Your program, unique to your needs, will accelerate the path to your target. Most have an idea of where they may want to go, but together with your Triumph Performance coach, we will assess your fitness level, develop a custom fitness plan, and keep you on track to successfully complete your goal. For more information, please contact a coach or email info@triumphstrength.net.